Well, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sascha Fahrbach. Over the past 24 hours, Russia launched a record 948 drones across Ukraine, hitting cities from Ivano-Frankivsk to Lviv, causing multiple casualties and damage to homes, hospitals, and cultural heritage sites. In Lviv, part of the UNESCO World Heritage Site, around the 17th century, St. Andrew's Church was also damaged, leaving at least 22 people wounded. Meanwhile, questions persist in Europe over leaked communications between Hungarian Foreign Minister Péter Szijjártó and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. Our guest today is Lesya Orobets, a former Ukrainian MP and CEO of Price of Freedom. Good to have you back on TVP World.
Good morning.
So let's begin with this latest attack. I mean, it's one of the largest we've seen. How significant is this use of drones? Almost 1,000 in the last 24 hours.
It is significant. It's a new record showing that Russia is still capable of producing that quantity and launching that quantity of drones. However, the good news is that Ukraine possesses and operates the best ever air defense in catching drones. Our interceptance rate was over 90% yesterday, so we missed barely 15, up to 20 drones out of 1,000, which is dramatic improvement in the quality of our work. Unfortunately, Russians are choosing the targets which are obviously civilian, have historic value and cultural value for us, and everyone who have ever been to Lviv knows the place. It's the very center of the city, usually densely populated with crowds of people watching the beautiful monasteries. So it is painful in terms of psychological effect, but and they were trying to show it. They were hitting specifically the city centers where only the civilian targets were.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we know that Russia does have these indiscriminate attacks, and we've unfortunately seen more of them ever since this war began. But why do you think the kind of numbers were used? Any kind of, let's say, indication of why Russia has struck so hard, so much in these last 24 hours?
I can only guess. I would presume that after we managed successfully to reach the Primorsk oil capacity, which is situated on Baltic Sea and was responsible for quite a high percentage of Russian oil trade, which we call among ourselves a kinetic sanctions, as it's our probably only effective way to keep out money flowing to Russian war machine. Russia was trying to retaliate and try to put down people's morale by attacking the city centers, showing how vulnerable our cities and civilian life could be.
Mm-hmm. And you said that many of them, and we have the statement as well here from the Ukrainian side, that many of these have been actually taken down. These drones were intercepted. Some did get through. Also being used, the Shahed and the Gerber drones. I mean, these are the Gerber ones are made in Russia now, that technology from the Shaheds. I'm just curious, can you tell us at all, looking at the damage, and we've seen this before, civilian buildings, culture buildings, hospitals, is this partially a failure of accuracy, or is this deliberate?
I'm sure that most of those attacks are deliberate, as drones, Shahed and Gerbera drones, are much more precise these days than they were at the beginning. And in strong cooperation with Iran at the beginning, Russia has managed to develop a weapon which tries to overwhelm the air defense system. As I've mentioned before, the interceptance rate was highest possible, but there's not a single air defense on planet Earth that is able to catch everything, and especially the attack of this magnitude. So if you remember the attack in September that was against the Polish air defense, where there were approximately 19 drones, and that was already hard enough. Russia is demonstrating something that it can still put on the table to threaten their neighbors. And the bigger question is, while Ukraine possesses the technology to intercept most of that, are our partners and allies eager and willing to learn the lesson and be prepared themselves as well, specifically taking into account the reports of the intelligence that Russia is probably preparing some attacks on Baltics or Poland in the nearest couple of months.
You mentioned neighbors and allies. In fact, overnight, we've also had 2 drones that crashed into the Baltic states. We're looking at Estonia. I believe that there was a drone crash from Russia into a power plant. Nothing that was seriously damaged. Also, Latvia reported this. What does this tell us? I mean, is this accidental, again, deliberate? What should NATO and what should these allies do because of this?
We have to be on a high alert and not let ourselves be distracted by any situation in Iran or something. Russia may use this pause and this distraction of the US to the Middle East to move forward and play this geopolitical game with threatening NATO countries and then trying to negotiate the favors in at the price of Ukraine or other countries to settle. And this is the scenario we have to avoid at any cost. And the only way to avoid it is to be constantly vigilant and prepared, meaning training, buying or co-producing with Ukraine the air defense, being trained and be on high alert as a situation in Ukraine and attacks on Ukraine show the magnitude of the possible attack that could happen.
And I want to switch gears a little bit. I mean, one thing that we've been also covering and talking about are these leaks, communication leaks, apparently between the Hungarian foreign minister, Mr. Sascha, and the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov. This goes back to 2020, but nevertheless, that kind of information now present, apparently this open line between the Hungarians and the Russians, maybe a surprise or not, but how is that perceived in Kiev? What does that say about the credibility of Hungary, but also of Hungary's, let's say, access to information with Russia and the European Union?
I wouldn't use the term Hungary. I would use the term of Orban's government or Orban's regime, because we have to see the difference. There are a lot of Hungarian people that were helpful to Ukraine and still are, and have different opinion than their government, and we appreciate that. And we're having this discussion precisely 2 weeks before the election, which will be critical for Hungarian people and destiny. But we are thankful to Washington Post that publicized this information. We knew it before, we just couldn't prove it to that preciseness, that Orban's government and his Minister of Foreign Affairs, Petr Siarto, shouldn't be trusted and should be treated as the allies of Russia, which Russia is using to jeopardize the EU's integrity, EU security, and the ability of the EU to take quick and unanimous decisions in its favor. So such leakages are not just a sharing of information, it's also receiving instructions what to do and how to manipulate those countries that were acting in the best interest of the European Union. This is the deafening warning that something critically bad is actually happening in EU, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I'm sure that sooner or later we will figure out a number of European politicians from different countries that were playing this way or another in favor of a Russian regime, either for money or for ideological reasons, but nevertheless, they were weakening their own countries and our own unity and ability to defend. Ukraine being the candidate member state, we watch very closely the security situation within the EU as we are doing our best. We are working on reforms and checking the benchmarks to be able to join the EU sooner or later, and this we see this as our common problem. And right now, the situation with financing Ukraine with this 90 billion debt is put on hold by Orban. And now when we know that Orban and his ministers are actually getting direct orders by Putin, we know that this way of taking the decision was actually influenced by Russia. So Ukraine is put on pause with financing during the most critical time of the war is done by Putin directly influencing the EU decisions.
Just one quick sentence, if I can just get your comment on one thing. Also, peace talks that have stalled. Sure. Apparently, Donald Trump has said that both Putin and Zelensky are getting close to a deal. How credible is that?
I wouldn't put my money on that. Not even 100 zloty, sorry. It looks like negotiations are actually happening about the technicalities, but the biggest question is whether Ukraine is willing to give up on Donbass is a strong no. And even being blackmailed with the absence of American support, which at the end of the day is not just a support, it's just selling money for European, selling weapons for European money. So even this kind of a support is not valuable enough to exchange our Donbas territory for that, because just for your audience to understand, Donetsk region is the system of fortresses. It's like the last area of protection of Europe itself against the Russian maneuver on the east of Ukraine. If we give it up, we wouldn't be able to protect any of our big cities on the left bank, and sooner or later Russia would use the advantage to proceed. So it's, long story short, it's the immune system of Ukraine that we are talking about, and it's not wise to give it up to an enemy that still has a 1 million army. And to get those territories, Russia would have to put that army down. But if you favor the aggressor with both territories and keeping their army intact, then the appetites rise, and it's just a matter of question and the time where they will attack next. Is it Baltics? Is it Poland? Is it Nordic countries? I mean, we know how dictators are prepared for the war. The Iran situation shows that dictators are much better prepared to fight these days than us democracies. So we have to be united to protect meaningfully, and not just giving anything to get an ugly deal.
Interesting thing you said there, the immune system, their defense immune system, the Donbass. So this is going to be a critical issue. Look, thank you so much for that. Lesya Orobets, their former Ukrainian MP. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sascha. Have a good day.
Thank you for watching. That concludes World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.